that I'm expecting to be Azerbaijan. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm really sorry. Oh, I've just realized that the stream was set to go live at 11. Apologies. We always go live half an hour before the race. Maybe sometimes an hour if I make that mistake. I made that mistake recently, didn't I? Oh, dear. Finally. Apologies. If anyone's been waiting for half an hour, I am really sorry. How to become a member? You just hit the button down below. There should be a members button. It's in the description as well. Hello, guys. Please subscribe. Thank you, V12 Car Guy. Sup? You're kind of very late. I'm not late. I am because I set the stream to go live at the wrong time. But in terms of like generally, this is when we go live before a Grand Prix. So I'm not going to blame myself too much. But I now apologize for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Win predictions. We'll get into predictions. I feel like the predictions can all go out the window, to be honest, because there's going to be safety cars. There's going to be red flags. I think, you know, this Grand Prix is set up to be either one of the most entertaining Grand Prix we will see this season, possibly ever in Formula One. Am I really going to throw it that high up in the rankings of things? I think I possibly am. Or the tyres are going to be completely wrong, and we're actually just going to watch possibly the most disappointing Grand Prix, considering how good qualifying was yesterday. You know, we're expecting big things, and we could end up having not so big things in the actual Grand Prix itself. For the race, I don't care about my team, McLaren, today. I support Lawson and Carlos. Another midfield podium would be... I mean, a double midfield podium feels ridiculous, but we've already had Hulkenberg on the podium. We've had Hadjar on the podium. Like, how many midfield teams are going to manage to get a podium place this season? There's got to be... I suppose going back through the history of Formula One, unfortunately, the record for that is probably quite high, mainly due to the reliability issues of previous eras of Formula One. But certainly it feels like we're getting a lot of midfieldy cars slotting into the podium places, or at least edging towards the podium places. If you're Alex Albon, you got to be kind of disgusted by the fact it might be Carlos Sainz, right? Because Alex Albon's been so good this season, finished in 5th place 3 times, and yet it might be Carlos Sainz, the guy who's just come from Ferrari and winning Grand Prix at Ferrari, who might nab the podium place for Williams after all the work Alex Albon has done for that team. Hello, Echo. How's it going? Thank you to the new subs. Thank you, Sally, for keeping everybody... Oh, look who it is. Sorry, Kelly. I'm sorry. Shall we go through it, though? Should we talk about qualifying yesterday? And in fact, I want to just preface this because I feel like I'm going to go straight into talking about Max Verstappen, how good Max Verstappen is, how ridiculously quick he was. Oops, there's the behind the scenes. But the reason I'm going to go into that is because Max Verstappen's qualifying was ridiculous and he was so quick and it was insane, right? You look at this. And this doesn't look like a crazy graph, you know. Okay, he improved. This is his Q1 time, 141.3. Improved a little bit in Q2, 141.255. And then improved once again, a 141.117. Okay, he improved by a 10th or so between Q1, Q2, Q3. And normally, that would be a nothing. That would just be like a, oh yeah, okay, he's improved a little bit between each of the sessions. Normally, we'd see a bit more improvement than that. But there were 6 red flags. It was a 2-hour-long session. And the majority of that time, the drivers had to just sit in the garage or even hop out of the car as they were waiting for things to be put back together again. The fact that Max Verstappen was able to hold that mentality and hold the fact that he was improving every time and knowing where to improve and knowing where to find that extra 10th in Q2, in Q3, between all of the delays and between all of the red flags is mind-bending to me. Like, how on earth he managed to hold himself in that space of, okay, that's where I went wrong 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago in this absolutely insane qualifying session that we've got, and I need to improve that there. there was not many drivers that were able to do so. Shall I show you Lando Norris's, for instance? Lando Norris's fastest time in qualifying yesterday came in Q1. Shall I show you Charles Leclerc, who I know didn't get to set a Q3 time, but his fastest time came in Q1. A lot of the drivers who we expected to be in and amongst that qualifying pole position battle weren't able to improve as the sessions went on. Max Verstappen was able to improve every single session. Like, I just don't know how he does it. He is a phenomenon to me, is Max Verstappen. And I know he just lives, breathes, eats motor racing. And we had a weekend off Formula One last weekend and he was still out there in a car racing. But I can't use any more superlatives for Max Verstappen. They are just his mentality and his way of driving and the way he is able to pull out performances. He's qualified on pole position 5 times this season, more than anybody else. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, the dominance of that McLaren car. We talk about how quick that McLaren car is compared to everything else. Max Verstappen has the most pole positions this season. Just ridiculous. Don't know how he does it. Absolutely insane. But just wanted to show you that because everybody else who's, talking about, Antonelli, even the same. Antonelli couldn't improve in that final part of qualifying. Russell couldn't improve in that final part of qualifying. Went slower in the final part of qualifying than before. Max Verstappen went quicker. Max Verstappen did what nobody else could do. Max Verstappen found that extra 10th. Just insane from him. Let's look down the rest of the qualifying grid, though, because Max Verstappen does start on pole position. But I suppose that the bigger talking points, we've seen Max Verstappen starting on pole, is Carlos Sainz, who now in this Williams iteration of Carlos Sainz, okay, we got used to seeing him in and around the first couple of rows when he was at Ferrari. It's a whole different ballgame when you qualify up there in a Williams car. Second place for Carlos Sainz yesterday. And that is all down to not just him, but the Williams team absolutely perfecting the intermediacies of yesterday's qualifying session. Like, they went out on the right tyres at the right time. They predicted what was going to happen with various other drivers. They went out early in that first part of Q3. They went out at the right time in Q2. They made sure that Carlos Sainz had the track at the perfect moments. And you have to put that down to the Williams team behind him. And as Carlos Sainz said, they executed everything to the best of their ability. Then Liam Lawson behind. That RB car looks ridiculously quick. And Liam Lawson has really stepped up in the last few races, kind of just before the summer break and post-summer break. Okay, Liam Lawson's also been involved in a few issues here and there. He likes to smash into the side of a few cars, don't we all? But Liam Lawson has actually been getting better and better and better, and I think we're now seeing the best of Liam Lawson once again inside of that RB. And again, they got it right. They went out the right part of qualifying. They did it at the right time. Then the 2 Mercedes cars behind, was not expecting it to be the 2 Mercedes cars that were closest to pole position beyond Max Verstappen. You look at the 2 McLarens, 2 Ferraris. I think we were all expecting those 4 cars to be ahead of the Mercedes cars, but Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, again, did the right thing at the right time. It's very George Russell to get that right. I'm glad that Kimi Antonelli is in there as well. I think Kimi Antonelli needed a weekend like this, needed a qualifying session like this to get a bit of that confidence back in the car again, because he can say to himself, it was a really disrupted qualifying. It was a really tough qualifying for even the best of drivers to get right. And I was one of those drivers who was actually able to outperform George Russell in that and get onto the second row of the grid, even in the really tricky conditions right at the end. And I think he can take a lot of positives from that, can Kimi Antonelli. George Russell seemed a little bit disappointed. Maybe thought he could have, just edged ahead of Carlos Sainz, Liam Lawson, but it would have been tough because you look at Sainz and Lawson's lap times at the end there. And again, I'll kind of show the screen to you. You look at like Liam Lawson's lap times, for instance, a 141.7 in the conditions that they were. I know it was very, very tight. Carlos Sainz was a little bit quicker. Whereas like Carlos Sainz is 141.595. But George Russell a 142.0. It's like, oh, could he have found 0.3 of a second? I think he'll probably look back at his lap and say yes. Could he have found 0.3 of a second? Could he have found half a second? Possibly not, considering the conditions that he was in, but I think George Russell will first and foremost see Antonelli ahead of him and think, I can get the better of him in the race. And then it will be, can he hunt down Liam Lawson, Carlos Sainz? And is George Russell versus Max Verstappen going to be the battle that we've actually got for the win in this Grand Prix? Like, quite possibly, because they were both very, very solid. And also, it's the battle we want to see, isn't it? When was it? A couple of years ago when we had Max Verstappen and George Russell having a little argument in the pit lane in Baku here. Now it's out on track. If we could see those two battling for a win here in Azerbaijan, that'd be very tasty indeed. I think that's the championship battle we all kind of hope we'll see at some point in the future, right? Max Verstappen, George Russell going toe-to-toe. No love lost between them. They already hate each other, let alone how much they would hate each other if they were also battling for a championship. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Yuki Tsunoda down in 6th place. What do we think Yuki Tsunoda can do from there? Is there an expectation that he needs to go forwards? Because again, you look at Antonelli, Lawson, Sainz ahead of him, maybe less so Antonelli, but usually you would say a Red Bull should be able to get the better of a Williams car and an RB car. But with Yuki Tsunoda behind the wheel, will he be able to move it up there? I don't know. It's one of those things where I still just don't trust Yuki Tsunoda. It's his best qualifying inside of a Red Bull car. So you can take the positives from that. Maybe a podium for Yuki, says Rishi. Okay. I think it's going to be tough for a podium place, but I can see why you would predict that, right? You can look at the cars ahead of him. Antonelli still in his first season, still maybe able to get the better of Kimi Antonelli. Then you look at Lawson and Sainz, midfield cars, and you go, okay, well, the Red Bull should be quicker than those two cars ahead. So there's only George Russell that's really a hurdle, I would say, in front of Yuki Tsunoda that you wouldn't expect him to be able to jump. But it's Yuki Tsunoda in a Red Bull car that he's really struggling with. So I'll let you guys predict where you think Yuki Tsunoda is going to come, because we then come to the McLaren cars. And it was disappointing, wasn't it? Very, very disappointing indeed. Talk about Isack Hadjar in the middle of them in a second, but let's talk Norris first. It felt like a big opportunity for him, didn't it? A very uncharacteristic mistake from Oscar Piastri, putting it into the wall in Q3 without setting a lap time. It wasn't entirely, his fault, the fact that he wasn't able to set a lap time because of the red flags that kept getting in the way, but he was then one of those red flags, and it was a chance. It just felt like a chance for Lando Norris to be like, right, this is the race where, similar to last year, it's kind of the inverse of last year, right? Where Lando Norris, it felt like Azerbaijan was going to be a big Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri then goes on to win it last year. And we were talking about the title battle with Max Verstappen a year ago and going, okay, he's qualified, what was it, out in Q3 last year in Azerbaijan for Lando Norris. And it was like, maybe the title fight is kind of dead and buried from here onwards, because he's lost out on so many points there and has to start so far back compared to Max Verstappen and his teammate. It's kind of the inverse of that. This year, it felt like, okay, this is now the opportunity for Lando Norris to really stamp his authority on the championship a little bit after the disappointment that he had in the Netherlands, and coming into the summer break being 9 points behind his teammate. He wouldn't have thought too much about it. Now, a couple of races later, being more than 30 points behind Oscar Piastri, and you go, you're in a very difficult situation. Every opportunity that arises for itself needs to be taken. And it just wasn't from Lando Norris. Starts from 7th place, was slow in Q3. The team got it wrong. They sent him out first of all the drivers that went out after that final red flag. And it was just one of those things where I felt for Lando Norris in that moment. He was very cool, calm and collected about it after the fact when they were talking post-qualifying in the interviews. But I think deep down he knows that he could have been starting much further ahead of his teammate. And the fact that Oscar Piastri crashed out in Q3, but is still going to be looking at the rear wing of his championship rival going into the first corner, possibly even ahead of Lando Norris going into the first corner. You know, you could see Oscar Piastri going, I'm in ninth, dart up the inside of Lando Norris into turn one, see what happens. You know, if I get a good start and Lando Norris maybe doesn't get away as good, you could definitely see Oscar Piastri just going for a maneuver there. Because again, he has the advantage of having the points, right? So if Piastri does go down the inside of Lando Norris, if Lando Norris then sweeps in and both of them are out of the Grand Prix, that actually plays in Oscar Piastri's favour rather than Lando Norris's favour. So Piastri can be a little bit more giving. Piastri can sort of force the moves a little bit more, and Lando Norris has to be the one that's a bit careful. Lando Norris needs to be the one that finishes the Grand Prix. Lando Norris needs to make sure that even if he does wipe out his teammate, he doesn't disappear off from himself. Isack Hadjar in between. A couple of people asking about Isack Hadjar. I did think it was a weird interview from Isack Hadjar. I can kind of understand why, but he's got a proper mentality about him, hasn't he? He's got like the bit between his teeth now. I think the first half of the season, he was getting to grips with Formula One, had some incredible performances, and now he's kind of got a podium behind his back in the Netherlands. He's performed incredibly well throughout various different Grand Prix, and it felt like Hadjar's mentality, was like, this car should have been higher, and I should be able to get better out of it. Looking at where Liam Lawson was. So Isack Hadjar was the most annoyed of anybody in the post-qualifying interviews. And, you know, you think of all the drivers that crashed. You think of all the drivers that had disappointing qualifyings. Isack Hadjar was livid. He was so angry. Like, if you haven't seen it, well worth watching Isack Hadjar's post-qualifying interview, because I think it's the most annoyed I've ever seen a driver about anything. And actually, he qualified 8th. Like, it's not too bad. For a midfield team, he got through to Q3, qualified ahead of 2 very quick cars. Again, you could argue he was sort of 8th of the final 8 that actually took part in qualifying, but he was still pretty good. Like, still an 8th place qualifying should be something to actually celebrate when you're an RB. Not when you're Isack Hadjar, apparently. Just Isack Hadjar livid about the fact that he's starting in 8th place. So I love that from him. I love the fact that he's got that mentality now, and I love the fact that he backs himself to perform every single weekend to the highest possible ability. But he could calm down a touch. I think Isack can be fairly happy with an 8th place. So funny to watch that interview, though. So funny to watch Isack Hadjar just absolutely lose it with an 8th place qualifying. Let's talk about Ferrari. I don't know, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, it felt almost like destined to be, didn't it? We looked at FP2, they were first and second. Lewis Hamilton came out of Friday going, this is probably the best start to a weekend we've had. And then as soon as you say something like that as a Ferrari driver, you know that you're just putting yourself into a world of hurt. Because Ferrari will find a way to make it absolutely horrendous. And Ferrari will find a way to ruin your afternoon. And, like, they kind of just got in each other's way, didn't they? You know, Charles Leclerc in particular had an absolute nightmare qualifying, going deep into turn 1. Then the next flying lap, he improves just to go deep into turn 3. Like, he was not having the best of qualifying sessions. And the problem was Lewis Hamilton was getting the tow from Charles Leclerc. So when Leclerc goes deep into turn 1 and brings out the yellow flags, Hamilton loses out because of that. When Charles Leclerc goes deep into turn 3 and Hamilton is the car behind, Hamilton loses out because of those yellow flags. So Charles Leclerc was kind of ruining the session for both of them, really. And then Hamilton just wasn't quick enough at the end. Those tyres, they'd done too many laps. He was miles off the pace of Fernando Alonso, it has to be said. So if we pick up those graphs again and we just look at the fastest laps of Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, Hamilton quicker on the straights, yeah, but Fernando Alonso, oh no, I want the other lap from Fernando Alonso, don't I? I want that lap from Fernando Alonso. Anyway, this lap from Fernando Alonso, actually Lewis Hamilton ended up being quite a way off of Fernando Alonso's time, because Fernando Alonso 141.8, Lewis Hamilton 142.1. So actually I want, where have I gone? Let's go again. I want this lap from Hamilton, and I want this lap. There we go. Oh God, have I just broken all of this? Right, let's just, I don't think I need to show you in this much detail, but I'm now annoyed at myself that I can't just get this to work. There we go. If we look at the lap between Alonso and Hamilton, Hamilton was actually quite far off the pace of Alonso, 3/10 slower than Fernando Alonso, and Alonso still didn't make it through into Q3 either. And you just look at the fact that Hamilton was quicker than Alonso, but then kind of lost it through turn 3, turn 4. Oops. God, I'm absolutely horrendous at this today. What is going on with me? Let's reset. Through turn 3, turn 4, kind of lost it a little bit, did Fernando. Hamilton lost it through turn 3, turn 4. Gained it back a touch. Like you can see, lost a bit of time. Gained it to Fernando, but then actually didn't gain too much. And then by the time they got to the second sector, Hamilton's tyres clearly just off of it. Couldn't get anywhere close to Fernando Alonso's time either. So Hadjar DNS. Where are you getting this from? Maybe. I hope not. Hoping for a Hadjar masterclass. It was Esteban Ocon got a disqualification, if that's what you're talking about. Have I missed something? I was waffling on. I was trying to get this to work. But yeah, Alonso, Hamilton, Leclerc, it was all a bit of a disaster for all of them, really. Well, actually, I think Alonso was moderately happy, considering the Aston Martin we weren't expecting to be very quick at all. Maybe can snatch a point scoring finish or something from 11th place there, but not a fun one. Oh, Sebastian, thank you for the $10 super chat. Thank you very, very much indeed. Double points Williams DNF. Oh wait, double points Williams, DNF Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, and George Russell. Predictions from me. 3 of the big boys going out there. That would be absolutely wild. And double points finish for Williams. Have you seen where Alex Albon is starting? have you seen where Alex Albon is beginning this Grand Prix? We haven't even got to him yet as we're talking now the qualifying positions. Bortoletto and Stroll start 13th and 14th. Bit of a non-plus. So Q2, both of them making mistakes. Bortoletto not happy about it. Lance Stroll also a little bit frustrated, but was what it was. They both made a couple of errors in Q2, and when you make even the tiniest of errors in qualifying at the moment, it's so tight between the whole field. It automatically puts you down 3-4 places from where you could have been. And then Ollie Behrman, disappointing. I can understand why. He just really went for it. Caught the outside wall on turn 2. You know, it's not like he's the only driver that made a mistake. We saw Piastri in the wall, Leclerc in the wall. Some very experienced drivers clipping the barriers. Alex Albon, one of those as well. So Ollie Behrman clipping the wall. Unfortunate for him. Franco Colapinto, I'm surprised is starting 16th. I thought with the amount of damage to that car, they might have to replace some bits and pieces inside of that. He might end up starting from the pit lane, but no. Alpine have put his car back together again. It was a weird incident, wasn't it? It's very Alpine that both cars make the same mistake at the same corner. And because Pierre Gasly is already down that escape road at turn 4, then Franco Colapinto can't go down the escape road at turn 4, so just has to go into the barriers and just accept that he's going to smash his car into pieces. Nico Hülkenberg, disappointing. I know that we weren't expecting too much from the Stake Sauber car here this weekend, although, you know, Bortoletto had a pretty good qualifying in Monza, and that normally carries over into Azerbaijan. I think with Hülkenberg now being out-qualified, what is it, 7 qualifying sessions in a row? Hülkenberg needs something to go right for him in qualifying. There's just something not clicking there inside of that Stake Sauber when it comes to quali. Gasly in 18th. Alex Albon, our first red flag, down in 19th. I think he can look at the fact that Carlos Sainz is second and again sort of be like, why isn't that me? If Carlos Sainz does manage to get us a podium here, Alex Albon will be so gutted because he's done so well this season. And then, yeah, Esteban Ocon, it was the flexibility of his rear wing that is always something that they're going to check in Baku, especially after what happened with Oscar Piastri last year here. So Ocon disqualified because of that rear wing. They then had to ask permission to start the Grand Prix, and they were given that permission, so they got there. Oh, thank you for redeeming 100 coins, 100 whatever they're called on Twitch. Highlighted a message. How many safety cars and red flags are we going to see today? I mean, 6 yesterday felt excessive, didn't it? Safety car, I feel like at least 1. Red flag. The problem is, actually, I was going to say safety car more likely, but because it's so narrow here in Baku, as we saw yesterday, when a car hits the barriers, there's not really a way round it. You just kind of hit into the car. It's always on the racing line. So yeah, probably more likely red flags than safety cars. I reckon we may not even see a safety car, but we'll see 1 or 2 red flags. That would be the dream scenario, I think. And another $10 super chat from Sebastian. Sebastian showing the rest of you guys up, going to be honest with you. No, thank you, Sebastian. I believe in Alex Albon, and we've been seeing drivers from the back of the grid that finish at least P10, P9 as well. That's very true. I suppose with me saying that, the fact that I think we might end up getting a red flag or 2, a safety car somewhere, you know, strategy kind of goes out of the window as well, doesn't it? Because if you pit and then there's a safety car, or if you pit and then particularly if there's a red flag and everybody gets to change their tires under the red flag conditions and you didn't, you lose out so much compared to the rest. So maybe we'll see like some of those guys towards the back end of the grid, although Albon is starting on the medium tire. I was going to say like Hülkenberg and Gasly maybe just starting on the hard compound tire to go really, really long, and then possibly get to the point where if there is a red flag or a safety car, they kind of benefit because everybody else ahead of them has already stopped. But that again is a bit of a gamble, because we've been told, again, whether it will happen, we've been told that we should get a 2-stop strategy here. Although we've been told that a few times from a few different people, and it hasn't quite happened that way. So we'll have to wait and see. Ferrari going to pit Leclerc before the red flag, just wait. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like, it is definitely going to happen where one of the Ferraris, they're going to pit their car, and then probably the other Ferrari is going to cause a red flag. Like, that's how yesterday went, wasn't it? Just both of them getting in the way of each other quite often. Oh, this headphone is not staying in. Might swap my headphones out in a moment. Are we going to go to the track view thingy? Yes. Indeed we are, because we are, what, a minute away now from the start of the formation lap. So much to talk about from qualifying yesterday. I mean, we didn't cover all of it, but maybe we should have gone live an hour before the Grand Prix started. Here we are then. The Baku Street Circuit. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? It doesn't quite fill the space like some of the other circuits do. Maybe I need a slightly different layout when we've got some weird track layouts in front of us. But there is Baku. All cars on the start line at the moment. Max Verstappen at the beginning of it. Just going to up my volume a touch. There is 51 laps ahead of us. Are we going to see a 2-stop? Are we going to see a 1-stop? The medium tyres expected, Pirelli have said, to go to around lap 20 of the Grand Prix. Formation lap is now underway, though. We're going to see the cars starting to make their moves around this circuit. It's quite a long lap around Azerbaijan. Like, maybe underrated as to how long a lap around the Azerbaijan circuit actually is. Enough of that. Oh wow, what do you think? What do I think about how is Lawson's race will go on? What? I think he'll probably fall back a couple of places. If we're being honest, you know, we're hoping Carlos Sainz and Liam Lawson are able to do it, but Piastri, Norris, Russell behind, even Leclerc, I feel like they're going to be able to make moves forwards. So We're going to see 7 red flags and 59 Burt Mylander interventions. Also helped Logan Sargent win the race. I think you're a year off, but we're good. I think we're going to see our wait for a red flag stop. Yeah, I think so. I think that's why Max Verstappen has started on the hard compound tyre, to be honest. You know, you look at Sainz, Lawson, Antonelli all starting on the medium, Russell starting on the hard, Tsunoda starting on the hard. Norris and Piastri, though, starting on the medium compound tyre. But then the McLaren cars are generally a little bit nicer to their tyres than the rest of the cars on the grid. So maybe they're just hoping that that will be the case again. But yeah, Verstappen certainly going long, Russell going long and thinking, start on the hard compound tyre. If there's a red flag, then, you know, if there's a red flag, say 20, 25, 30 laps in, then we can kind of swap our tyres then. But here we are then, Max Verstappen just making his way towards the final sector around turn 16. He's going to slow it down a touch before going down this final back straight towards turn, well, I was going to say turn 19 and turn 20, but to be honest, 17, 18, 19 and 20 are flat out in these modern day Formula One cars. Like they're slight kinks in the road, but they're not going to cause any of the drivers to blink twice. Antonelli and Russell filing themselves in. Esteban Ocon just coming around turn 12 at the moment, so still a minute or so until we get all 20 cars back onto their grid spots where they were. Nobody starting from the pit lane, which is first time in a while feels like there's no cars starting from the pit lane. We've often seen a couple of cars making some strategic decisions throughout Parc Ferme between qualifying and the race and deciding to change up front wings, rear wings, parts of their Formula One car, but nobody deciding to do that this time. And everybody starting on track. Esteban Ocon weaving through turn 20 now and joining the back of the queue. It's slowed down quite considerably. Max Verstappen's not going to be very happy about that, sitting at the front of the pack for a little while longer than he would have wanted to, as Lance Stroll and Ollie Behrman kick out the rear end of their cars to warm up the tyres underneath them. As I say, Esteban Ocon, the driver that we're waiting to be stationary. The final 3 just taking their positions then is Gasly, Albon and Ocon still in motion. Gasly comes to a stop, so does Alex Albon. And finally, Esteban Ocon into his grid slot. The green flag is waved, the 5 red lights are ready to go. And here we are then for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, 51 laps, and Max Verstappen gets away well. Carlos Sainz actually having a little bit of a battle with Verstappen. Liam Lawson also holding on to his position really well. And it's a side-by-side with Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda going around one another. Isack Hadjar looking up the inside of the McLaren car, and Isack Hadjar doing very well indeed to keep his place. Oscar Piastri, what's happened to him? He's fallen all the way down. I think he's gone wide at turn 1. Has Oscar Piastri starting from 9th down to 20th place. And it's gone all wrong for Oscar Piastri. And he's plummeted down the order. Ollie Behrman tried to have a little go at Franco Colapinto. Colapinto able to hold on to that position, though. It is still Verstappen, Sainz, Lawson, our top 3. Antonelli, Russell, Tsunoda stayed where they are. Hadjar as well. And, oh, and it's Oscar Piastri in the wall. Oscar Piastri in the wall on turn 5 and turn 6. Oscar Piastri handing Lando Norris a big opportunity here this weekend then. Oscar Piastri out of the Grand Prix. That's going to be probably a safety car, I would imagine. He is deep into the Tech Pro barriers at turn 5, turn 6. And there is our first safety car, ladies and gentlemen. Piastri, he made a mistake down towards turn 1, plummeted down to 20th place. And then also made a mistake at turn 5, turn 6. And it's the first weekend where Oscar Piastri has really thrown away a possibility. He's just locked up completely as he went into turn 5 and just gone straight. And Oscar Piastri then out of this Grand Prix already. The safety car just made its way out of the pit lane, is going to pick up Max Verstappen at the front of the pack. Wow. The mistake yesterday, very similar to the mistake yesterday, honestly. Just locked up, didn't make anywhere near the apex, and into the barriers goes Oscar Piastri. And his championship advantage is now under threat. Huge opportunity for Lando Norris now. Let's look at the championship standings to remind ourselves of it. Obviously, Oscar Piastri will still lead the championship, whatever happens, really, from this Grand Prix, as he is on 324 points. That's going to remain exactly the same as it is now. But Lando Norris starting this weekend, 293. 293 is where he starts, and now he has the opportunity to close in a considerable chunk of that. 4 points on the board for him right now, running P8, but he now has the whole race, 50 laps, well, 48 laps by the time the safety car likely comes around, to look at those 7 cars ahead of him and know that every single one of those cars he gets past, he will be gaining more and more points on Oscar Piastri for definite, because Oscar Piastri can't rebuttal. Oscar Piastri can't come from behind and get more points of his own. It is a huge, huge opportunity for Lando Norris now. The safety car still being tailed by Max Verstappen. Sainz and Lawson still in the top 3. Antonelli, Russell, Tsunoda, Hadjar, Norris where they started. The big winner, Charles Leclerc, obviously moves up a position as Oscar Piastri falls down. Lewis Hamilton also got ahead of Fernando Alonso, so both of the Ferraris up into the point-scoring places. Bortoletto up a position as well, Stroll up. Colapinto's done well to move 2 positions ahead of where he started. Ollie Behrman remains in 15th place. Pierre Gasly has also gained on Nico Hülkenberg. Esteban Ocon has also gained a position on Alex Albon. And Oscar Piastri, oh, he jumped the start. Jumped the start and then stopped, did Oscar Piastri. Absolute nightmare start from Oscar Piastri. Just made a complete mistake on the grid. And then just basically misery compiler for Oscar Piastri, falling all the way down to P20 and then hits the barriers turn 5, turn 6 as well. It's the worst weekend I can remember from Oscar Piastri in a very, very long time. Is it the pressure that is getting to Oscar Piastri now? Is it just a one-off where it just goes into turn 5 so hot, does Oscar Piastri? I know he's trying to make moves. Yeah, he anti-stalls. Oh, it's an absolute nightmare start from Oscar Piastri. He jumps the lights, then hits into the anti-stall of the car, then tries to get back going again, hits anti-stall once more. So stalls the car twice, does Oscar Piastri. And Fernando Alonso also looked to jump the start, I think, because Fernando Alonso is reacting to Oscar Piastri ahead of him. So Fernando then moved also in his grid slot. Didn't stop, but well, that will definitely be under investigation, I'm sure, from Fernando Alonso possibly jumping the start. I mean, he didn't gain anything from it. He's still in 11th place at the moment. Yeah, Oscar Piastri jump start, then had to stop, then falls all the way down to 20th place after he puts himself into anti-stall, and then is trying his best to make moves going through the field, but gets absolutely nowhere. From the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. Gasly then sees Piastri lock up, and yeah, Gasly. Oh, and there's actually a touch between the Nico Hülkenberg and the Haas of Esteban Ocon as well. There's a bump between them just ahead of where Oscar Piastri clattered the wall. Esteban Ocon trying to go around the outside of Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg clips the rear right tyre of the Haas car. Both of them continue on unscathed. Oh no, there is a little bit of carbon fibre coming off those two cars. Ocon has come into the pits and come in a second time, actually, has Esteban Ocon. We've got Alex Albon has also pitted behind the safety car too. So Albon and Ocon both pitted. Yeah, Marshall's trying to put the Tech Pro barrier still back together again. This is the one problem that we do have with safety cars around here in Azerbaijan, because the Tech Pro barriers do take quite a hunk of damage when they are hit. It takes a little while to put them back together again, like we saw in qualifying yesterday with the red flags. There's often a few minutes of delay. But they maybe didn't want to red flag it, because then everybody could have swapped behind the safety car. Monaco, but simply better. Always the Tech Pro barriers. Map is behind. I don't think that it is, you know. Maybe like a margin behind. But the safety car is now making its way down towards turn 3, from what I can see. But Oscar Piastri out of this Grand Prix. Already made a mistake on the starting grid. Then another mistake down towards turn 5. And the end of his weekend. When's the last time Oscar Piastri made 3 mistakes in a weekend? 3 big mistakes in a weekend as well. Safety car is ending this lap. Took a little bit longer than I was expecting. I forgot about the Tech Pro barriers having to be put back together again, to be honest. I was just thinking about moving Oscar Piastri's car out of the way. But he has crashed and out of this race. If you're Lando Norris inside of that McLaren car now, the pressure on you is unfathomable. He had the opportunity yesterday to really turn the knife, but didn't take it, and another opportunity has presented itself. Oscar Piastri out of this Grand Prix. Lando Norris currently gaining 4 points on his championship rival. But so many points up for grabs. If he can get 25 points, it would negate the DNF, of course, in the Netherlands. Kind of put us back to where we were a couple of races ago. What does Verstappen do here with the restart, though? Let's focus on the current race leader, who is battling with a Williams car for the lead of this Grand Prix. Verstappen on the harder compound tyre. And this is where starting on the medium, if you're Carlos Sainz, might just play into your advantage. You'll have that little bit better of a run down towards turn 1 in terms of your tyres. But, I mean, you are racing a Red Bull and you are racing Max Verstappen. So, Carlos Sainz, although the victory is right there and the possibility of leading a race for Williams, does he just play it safe and sit in second? If he plays it too safe, does Liam Lawson try to take advantage down towards the first corner here in Baku? That's what we'll see. Max Verstappen still weaving as we make it around turn 20. Verstappen leaving it very late indeed to put his foot down, maybe knowing that the medium compound tyre so incredibly tight between the 19 cars remaining, and Verstappen finally goes. Verstappen hits the pedal. And safety car is in. We're back onto lap 5 of the Grand Prix. And Verstappen has been able to escape away from Carlos Sainz. Sainz then defending from Liam Lawson. The 2 Mercedes cars go side by side. And I think Kimi Antonelli losing out to George Russell and... Oh no, it's George Russell who lost out. Russell falls behind Tsunoda as the 2 Mercedes cars go wheel to wheel through turn 1. Tsunoda up into 5th place, then gets jumped... George Russell gets jumped by Yuki Tsunoda. Isack Hadjar still remains in 7th place. Lando Norris has actually been jumped by Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris now down a position. That's not where we wanted him to be for the championship battle to really heat up. So Lando Norris now down to the position where he'd only gained 2 points on his championship rival if the race ended now. But we've still got a long way to go here. 47 laps of racing remain. Lewis Hamilton in 10th. Fernando Alonso is under investigation for that race start. and I think has been given a penalty. It is a 5-second time penalty for both Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri. Of course, Oscar Piastri not going to be able to deal with that 5-second penalty, so that's also going to roll into next week. It is going from bad to worse to absolute nightmare for Oscar Piastri, but Fernando Alonso with a 5-second time penalty for that false start as well. Bortoleto behind him. Alonso and Bortoleto again find themselves side by side on the racetrack. They love it, don't they? They are, of course, Fernando Alonso, his manager for Gabriel Bortoleto, just always seem to find themselves side by side. As Charles Leclerc then makes a move on Isack Hadjar and gets the move done. Leclerc now up into 7th place, and the pace of that Ferrari car suddenly coming to fruition. Lando Norris also looking at the back of the RB. Is the RB going to go side by side with Lando Norris down towards turn 1? He is indeed. Isack Hadjar is going to try and position himself up the inside of Lando Norris, but Lando Norris sweeps around the outside, and back up into 8th place goes Lando Norris. Isack Hadjar then has to worry about Lewis Hamilton, the RB car, being swamped by the front runners, Leclerc and Norris ahead of Hadjar very quickly there indeed. And Lewis Hamilton now trying to make it 3 cars in basically 4 corners. And he does indeed. Lewis Hamilton, no, not able to get past Hadjar this time. I thought he'd made it, but Hadjar then just able to sneak his RB car up the inside of Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari for now. The battle for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th really heating up as Fernando Alonso also tries to get involved in it, but isn't quite close enough to Lewis Hamilton to make a difference. Verstappen still leads and has gained more than a DRS advantage over Carlos Sainz. Let's look at this replay of Charles Leclerc then. Yeah, Leclerc just gets the power down well before Lando Norris gets right under the rear wing of the McLaren car. Lando Norris caught sleeping there on the restart, and Charles Leclerc then able to make the move down towards turn 1 before they even get into the braking zone really. Charles Leclerc very opportunistic. You can see the gap between Lando Norris and the rest of the field. Lando just all over the place, and George Russell not very happy with Kim and Antonelli at all there. George Russell pushed wide at turn 1 by his teammate and then loses out to Yuki Tsunoda, who just sneaks up the inside. And that's why we have Verstappen, Sainz, Lawson still our top 3, but Antonelli has remained in 4th, where Tsunoda has gained a position up to 5th. Russell's down to 6th. Charles Leclerc up into 7th place. I was looking at Max Verstappen setting the fastest lap, but then Kimi Antonelli comes in with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. George Russell all over the rear wing of Yuki Tsunoda. Lewis Hamilton also trying to get past Isack Hadjar once again, and we're starting to see the battles really coming to fruition. Lewis Hamilton once more under the rear wing of that RB car, but not quite able to make it happen. So Lando Norris back up into 8th place. That would mean 4 points for Lando Norris. Lando Norris, 4 points he would gain on Oscar Piastri. And again, every position really does matter at this point. Fernando Alonso just being given that 5-second time penalty on the radio for jumping the starts. And Alonso apologizes to the team. It is as we thought. Alonso just reacted to Oscar Piastri in front. And because Piastri got that penalty, Alonso also gets the penalty too. So Lando's going to crash into the wall, team orders or no. Fortunately, don't think that's the kind of fairness that they were talking about down at McLaren. It'd be interesting to see what Oscar Piastri has to say for himself after this Grand Prix. It's not very Oscar Piastri at all, but he is out of it. George Russell around the final. Well, I say the final corner. Turn 16 does feel like the final corner. Oh, a yellow flag somewhere. Then green once again. They love it here in Baku. Just chuck out a yellow flag for a millisecond just for fun. This race has the potential to be the best race this season so far. Yes and no. I just feel like Max Verstappen's going to run away with it now, no? Outside of the DRS range. Oh, Lewis Hamilton goes up the inside of the RB of Isack Hadjar, and Hadjar can't quite move up. And Hamilton does indeed get that move done up the inside of the RB. Lando Norris now DRS open behind Charles Leclerc, is trying his absolute best to get past the Ferrari. George Russell is also fighting with Yuki Tsunoda ahead, and there's a few battles in the top 10 now that are starting to get closer and closer as we eke out a few more laps on these tyres. Obviously, the safety car is going to have helped out those guys that did start on the hard compound tyre, because they're going to be able to go that little bit longer. But Lewis Hamilton had the DRS. Isack Hadjar, nothing he could really do. Hadjar tried his best to put Lewis Hamilton off and maybe cause Hamilton a bit of a headache, but Hamilton up the inside of turn 1, takes 9th place and moves up into that 2-point scoring position. Lando Norris then right under the rear wing of Charles Leclerc, trying to keep himself within that DRS range, is 9/10 of a second off the back of Leclerc. Luckily for him, Leclerc has no DRS to George Russell in front. But again, Lando Norris will be looking at the championship. As it stands, McLaren also won't win the Constructors' Championship. There was a possibility of them sealing the Constructors' Championship for definite this weekend. Of course, not expecting them to lose out on it because they don't manage to seal it this weekend, and most certainly will seal it in Singapore, a track where that McLaren car was so dominant last year. George Russell then looking at Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda peels to the inside. Very late move from Yuki Tsunoda to defend from George Russell. I'm sure George Russell will be on the radio talking about that as Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far. But George Russell and Yuki Tsunoda, that seemed a little bit naughty from Yuki Tsunoda there, in my opinion. Just moved quite late, did Yuki, but did only move once. So getting the elbows out inside of that Red Bull car. Tsunoda, possibly his first finish inside of the top 5 for a Red Bull car. Back-to-back victories for Red Bull. Tsunoda in the top 5. Laurent Mekies has got to be thinking to himself, I'm on an absolute barnstormer here. I'm doing a brilliant job. Christian Horner, who absolutely flown since the summer break, has the Red Bull team. George Russell, though, trying to ruin that top 5 finish for Yuki Tsunoda. Both of those on the hard compound tyre, so George Russell has to do it out on track. Can't just wait for a pit stop to play into his favour. Fernando Alonso has also dropped behind Gabriel Bortoleto. He went wide at turn 16, and Bortoleto taking that position from his manager. Should have mentioned as well. Fernando Alonso, though, with a 5-second time penalty, was likely to fall behind the Brazilian at some point anyway in this Grand Prix. Now, Franco Colapinto looking to be the beneficiary of that 5-second penalty. Here we are then. Yuki Tsunoda under pressure once again. George Russell coming around the final few bends. DRS doesn't quite have the advantage this time around. Is nowhere near as close as he was last lap. You see George Russell closing in. Moves to the outside and Tsunoda covers the inside line. Just wasn't quite as close that time around, George Russell. Maybe he's going to go for the move at a different position. Maybe he has a little look at turn 2. Not this time. There is DRS down towards turn 3. And actually, George Russell right under the rear wing of the Red Bull car. Another DRS zone for George Russell. Surely peels to the right-hand side of the track this time and gets the move done. George Russell decides that actually down towards turn 3 is the area where he wants to go for that move. And very well managed there from George Russell. Got right under the rear wing of Tsunoda at turn 1. Just put the Japanese driver slightly out of position through turn 1 and turn 2. And then got the DRS advantage down towards turn 3 and made it count this time. George Russell up into 5th place and back behind his teammate, as he was before the safety car and before Kimi Antonelli pushed him wide. It's a little bit of a gap, though, for George Russell to now contend with. 2.5 seconds the gap between Russell and Antonelli. Antonelli, though, within DRS range of Liam Lawson just about, although that's going to tick over to a second right about now. And Ollie Behrman being told over the radio there may be rain in the next 20 minutes. 20 minutes. So about 12, 13 laps time of this Baku circuit. That would be right about when the medium tyre runners were likely going to stop. So we're looking at lap 24, 25 because of the safety car, where the medium tyre runners would have stopped. And that's also whether the Haas team are expecting a possible rain shower. That could be very interesting if the rain comes just as the strategy for the medium tyre players starts to play out. Kimi Antonelli being closed in by his teammate, though. 2.2 seconds the gap between Antonelli and George Russell. Max is about to lock in when it rains. That's the only thing, right? If it does rain, Max Verstappen, pretty good in those conditions, as we saw yesterday. He was the only driver who was able to improve in Q3. Everybody else, you know, you look at Leclerc and Norris and the other drivers setting their fastest laps of the session during Q1. Verstappen actually setting his fastest lap of the session in Q3, as Formula 1 intended it to be. Keep on top of the management. You know the plan for today. Verstappen 2.5 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz. He's got a lovely barrier as Verstappen, because even if one of the big boys, say George Russell, does manage to get past Kimi Antonelli, he's then also got to deal with Lawson and Sainz, and they're not going to be easy to get past for George Russell. So Verstappen has got a lovely little barrier here, and unless there is another safety car or a red flag, it does feel like the win is pretty much in the bag for Max Verstappen. You know, you look at Max Verstappen's performances over the last 3 years. Would you expect Max Verstappen to lose a Grand Prix from this position without any chaos? Absolutely not. He's slowly building that gap, eking it out now from 2.5 to nearly 3 seconds, and just feels like he's sailing away at the front of the Grand Prix. It's all the drivers behind that are the talking point. Sainz versus Lawson. Lawson now being closed in by Antonelli as well. Antonelli needs to sort of get within half a second or so. We saw with George Russell versus Yuki Tsunoda, you kind of want to be 0.6 or so behind the guy in front if you do want to go for a move down towards turn 1 or even turn 3. So George Russell, Kimi Antonelli kind of needs to come out of turn 16 around half a second behind Liam Lawson before he really starts to get an opportunity to go past him. Having said that, Kimi Antonelli now exactly 0.6 seconds behind Liam Lawson, but they are just running around the middle part of the lap at the moment. Keep an eye on Kimi Antonelli's time. Could certainly be going for a podium place. Kimi Antonelli's second podium of his Formula 1 career up for grabs. That first one coming in Canada, of course. Yuki Tsunoda's also fallen a couple of seconds away from George Russell and is now within the clutches of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc closing into the back of the Japanese driver and is 0.8 of a second off the back of the Red Bull. Lando Norris also following on behind. Lando Norris still 8th place, but only 12 laps completed for Lando Norris. He knows that there is still time to come. Isack Hadjar holding on to that final point scoring place and got a couple of seconds barrier to Bortoletto. There is the confirmation. The pit window then for the medium compound tyre runners between 18 and 24, but we had, what, 3 laps under the safety car, 4 laps really under the safety car, so you can kind of push that back a little bit for the medium tyre runners. Max Verstappen, though, not one of those medium tyre runners and just disappearing off into the distance. George Russell has just set the fastest lap. Took 0.8 out of Kimi Antonelli, did George Russell. That is a very, very strong lap indeed. And does make you wonder, are the hard tyres starting to come into their own? And what will Mercedes do when George Russell gets to the back of Kimi Antonelli? They let them fight after the safety car, and that's what cost George Russell a good chunk of time behind Yuki Tsunoda. If you think, if George Russell hadn't fallen behind Tsunoda and lost that time battling with him, and instead actually got ahead of Kimi Antonelli, where could George Russell be now? Maybe we're talking about Russell versus Verstappen for the victory here, but even if Russell can get in front of, as I say, Antonelli, Lawson, Sainz, he's then got a 3.5 second gap, which is only increasing every single lap at this point. So George Russell, podium place certainly up for grabs. A win to get past Max Verstappen in these conditions would be very, very impressive indeed. Don't know what's going on with Franco Colapinto as well. Colapinto has fallen a mile behind as Ollie Behrman makes a move on Pierre Gasly to move up into 16th place. But Colapinto's pace is miles off it. He's nearly 5 seconds adrift of 12th place Fernando Alonso. And I know Alonso has a 5-second penalty, but Colapinto sitting right on the edge of that as George Russell then sets another fastest lap. Surely the Mercedes team need to let George Russell by here, because he's going to be right under the rear wing of Kimi Antonelli. And although Antonelli is within DRS range of Lawson ahead, feels like the hard compound tyres are now starting to really come into their own, especially on that George Russell Mercedes car. Will Kimi Antonelli move out of the way? What will the Mercedes team do? I'll keep you updated. As Lance Stroll now continues to have a look at Franco Colapinto. Colapinto causing a real headache for these cars behind. And I know they're not fighting for the point scoring places or anything yet, but, you know, a safety car, a red flag, you kind of want to keep yourself in contention with the rest of the field. Colapinto now 5 seconds adrift of 12th place. So everybody behind is really, really stuck. Max Verstappen still leading. Has sort of slowed down on that rate of improvement as Max Verstappen. It's now remained 3.5 seconds to Carlos Sainz for a couple of laps. George Russell, though, absolutely rinsing that Mercedes car for everything that it is worth. Closing in to the back of his teammate once more as they come around turn 15 together. Liam Lawson, though, racing for a podium place. He saw his teammate Isack Hadjar get one in the Netherlands. George Russell then does feel like he's just got more pace at this moment in time than Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli hasn't been able to get within that half a second that needs to be to properly battle with Liam Lawson. But it looks like Mercedes are letting the two cars just continue on as they are. Antonelli has a little look at Liam Lawson, and maybe that's why. Maybe Antonelli has been given a certain number of laps to get the move done. Antonelli does have a little look, but George Russell so quick behind him. Alex Albon running in 18th place. We're on board with him as he's looking at the back of Pierre Gasly's car, and that Alpine is just so slow in a straight line, isn't it? The Renault engine is an absolute nightmare. Franco Colapinto also battling with Lance Stroll, has just been able to keep that place ahead of him. But Alex Albon, fresher tyres, moves ahead. And Albon, on those medium tyres, did pit under the safety car, did Alex Albon, but holding on to those tyres for a good chunk of time. 13 laps already completed on the mediums. George Russell still looking at the rear end of Kimi Antonelli. And Yuki Tsunoda has actually been able to hold Charles Leclerc off for a little bit longer than I was expecting. Charles Leclerc, we haven't seen any big moves from the Ferrari man up to try and grab 6th place from Yuki Tsunoda yet. Possibly because Tsunoda's hard compound tyres starting to play into his favour. The medium tyre on Charles Leclerc, medium tyre on Lando Norris behind as well. George Russell about half a second or so behind his teammate as they come around turn 16. So Lawson, Antonelli, Russell is again the little pack of three that we watch go down towards turn 1. Antonelli has DRS, George Russell has DRS, but Antonelli nowhere near touching distance with Liam Lawson this time around. Just feels like the two Mercedes cars locking horns and not really able to do too much to one another. Lance Stroll once again looking at the rear wing of that Alpine car. DRS open for him. Surely gets a move on Franco Colapinto's Alpines, just going so slow in comparison. And then Alex Albon peels into the pits again. So it is a second stop for Alex Albon. Maybe deciding to go onto the hard compound tyre and maybe going to the end of the Grand Prix on that set of tyres, hoping for a safety car, but not a red flag, I think, there. Alex Albon and the Williams team. Because he's going to be able to go all the way to the end on those tyres. He's going to need some pretty swift lap times, is Alex Albon, to cause any kind of problems for anyone ahead. George Russell on the radio. Russell thinks he's got a tyre advantage to get past Lawson, and I agree, to be honest with you. Like, as much as I don't like team orders dictating who's where in the Grand Prix, I do think that George Russell is quicker at this moment in time than his teammate. And George Russell indeed asking for a swap there. But I think reasonably so. I think he's asking for a swap and is actually quicker than his teammate by a considerable margin. Franco Colapinto doing an absolute dream job, by the way. Because Colapinto... Oh...